If you've never driven medicine across remote villages at night, you probably think it sounds simple. Put the boxes in the truck, follow the dirt road, make the handoff, head home. And that's what I thought too. For the first 6 months, the job was exactly that. Long hours, bad roads, dead phone signal, and more dust than a man should ever have in his lungs. I worked for a private clinic outside Kasenga in a dry part of southern Africa, where villages sat far apart and the roads were really just paths the land had agreed not to swallow yet. My job was to move whatever the small outposts needed most urgently. Antibiotics, malaria kits, insulin, bandages, plasma coolers when the generators failed, sometimes even fuel for vaccine fridges. Most nights were quiet. Not peaceful. Quiet. There's a difference. Peaceful means the silence belongs to you. Quiet means it belongs to something else, and it's only letting you borrow it. I learned that on the Mavuno route. Nobody wanted that route after sunset. The older drivers all had excuses. One said the bridge near the dry river cracked after heavy rain. Another claimed bandits watched the tree line. One man, old Jabulani, just shook his head and said, "If the road goes silent, do not stop for voices." I laughed when he said that. He didn't. At the time, I thought that was just bush superstition. The kind older men keep around like lucky charms. Something to make sense of a land that could kill you with heat, distance, or one wrong turn. I was 29, trying to earn enough money to move my wife and daughter into a better house in town. Superstitions didn't matter to me. Diesel mattered. Time mattered. Deliveries mattered. So when the clinic manager asked who could handle the Mavuno route after our regular driver quit, I volunteered. That first night, nothing happened. I took 2 crates of antibiotics, 1 refrigerated insulin case, and a sealed envelope for the nurse at Mavuno Health Post. I left at 7:40 p.m. in the old Land Cruiser with the cracked dashboard and the radio that only worked when you hit it hard enough. The road ran past scrubland, thorn trees, and abandoned cattle fences that looked, in the dark, like rib bones sticking out of the ground. I reached Mavuno at 10:15. The nurse there, Amina, signed for the supplies and asked why they had sent me so late. I told her I was the new driver on the route. She looked over my shoulder toward the road behind me and said, "Then don't stay." That should have told me enough. But I was young, tired, and more irritated than afraid. I got back in the truck and started the drive home. About 40 minutes outside Mavuno, I saw someone standing beside the road. At least, I thought it was someone. Tall, thin, wrapped in pale cloth. They were too far away for details, but close enough that my headlights caught them for a second between the trees. They didn't wave, didn't move, just stood there, watching. I slowed, because that's what you do out there. If someone is stranded at night, you stop. You don't leave them for the hyenas, or the cold, or whoever else comes walking after midnight. Then I remembered Jabulani. If the road goes silent, do not stop for voices. The engine was still running, but that was the problem. I couldn't hear it anymore. The Land Cruiser was moving. The steering wheel vibrated in my hands. The headlights bounced over the ruts. But everything had gone silent. No engine, no insects, no wind, no loose tools rattling in the back. Nothing. My whole body tightened so fast it hurt. I looked again toward the figure on the roadside, and this time it wasn't there. There was only bush. I hit the accelerator so hard, I nearly sent the truck into a ditch. The sound came back all at once. The engine, the tires, the metal toolbox knocking against the side panel. I drove the rest of the way without looking in the mirrors. The next morning, I told myself it had been stress. That's the thing about fear. In daylight, it becomes embarrassment. For 3 more weeks, the Mavuno route was normal. Bad roads, delayed deliveries, twice a puncture, once a blown fan belt. Nothing supernatural, nothing lurking. I started to think I'd imagined the silence. Then the radio started talking. Not the clinic radio. That old truck had a shortwave set bolted under the dash, mostly for emergencies. The nearest repeater worked only on clear nights, and even then the transmission sounded like somebody speaking through rain. One Thursday, just after 11 p.m., the radio clicked on by itself. I nearly jumped out of my seat. Static poured through the speaker, then a voice. Male, low, calm. Not distorted, not broken. Clear. It said my name. Daniel. I pulled the truck over before I realized what I was doing. The road was empty in both directions, moonlight on thorn trees, dust hanging behind me. The radio hissed again. Daniel, why are you late? I grabbed the handset. Who is this? No answer. Then, softer this time. She is waiting. I shut the radio off. At least, I tried to. The switch moved, but the voice kept breathing through the speaker. Not speaking, breathing. I yanked the power cable out with shaking hands, and only then did it die. I didn't tell anyone that part. I told the clinic manager the radio was faulty and asked for a replacement unit. He said no budget. I asked the Mina at Mavuno if anyone ever used the old frequencies. She stared at me long enough to make me wish I hadn't asked. Then she said, "Did it use your name?" I remember the exact feeling that went through my stomach then. Not fear, recognition. The kind you get when something you were hoping was impossible turns out to have happened to someone else first. Amina took me behind the clinic where nobody could hear and told me about the previous driver, a man named Joseph Banda. He had driven the Mavuno route for nearly 2 years. Reliable, sober, not the kind of man to chase stories. One night, he arrived 3 hours late, white as chalk and shaking so badly he dropped a full medicine crate on his own foot and didn't even react. He kept asking if anyone had spoken to his wife. Nobody understood the question. He said he'd heard her on the road. She'd been dead for 5 years. A week later, he quit. 2 months after that, he was found wandering near the dry river without shoes, dehydrated and muttering one sentence over and over. It knows the names we keep inside. After that, nobody wanted nights on Mavuno. I asked Amina what it was. She looked toward the road again. Then she said, "Old people in the villages call it the listener." I laughed, but weaker this time. What is that supposed to mean? It waits where people travel alone, she said. It does not hunt the body first. It listens. It takes the voice it needs. Then it calls you with someone you trust. I told her that sounded like a folk tale for children. Amina nodded. Yes, she said. And yet you are asking me about it. That same week, the rains came early. Roads turned to mud. The shallow crossings filled. One of the outpost fridges failed, and they needed insulin delivered immediately. I tried to hand the route off to another driver, but everyone had an excuse. So at 8 p.m., I loaded the cooler, checked the spare tire, and drove back toward Mavuno with a storm rolling over the plains. The whole way, I kept the radio unplugged. Halfway there, I passed a burned baobab tree split down the center by old lightning. Jabulani had once told me never to stop near that tree because some places are doors after dark. That night, the truck died right beside it. 1 second the engine was running, the next it coughed, shuddered, and went dead. Rain hammered the windshield. I tried the ignition again. Nothing. I tried again. Nothing. No dashboard lights, no crank, no click, just darkness. Then my phone lit up in the cup holder. No signal. No battery a moment ago. I'd checked. Now the screen was glowing with an incoming call. It didn't show a number. It showed my wife's name. I cannot explain to you what kind of fear it is to see the name of someone safe at home appear on a dead phone in the middle of the bush, while rain beats against the windows hard enough to sound like hands. I answered. At first, all I heard was crackling. Then my daughter's voice. "Papa?" My throat closed. She was 6 years old then. I would have known that voice anywhere. "Papa, where are you?" I almost replied. Almost. Then I remembered something that saved my life. My daughter never called me Papa. At home, she called me Baba. Always. Before I could hang up, the voice on the line changed. Still my daughter's voice. Same softness, same age. But the words were wrong. "Open the door," it whispered. "I'm outside." Something knocked once on the driver's side window. Not loud, just polite. I turned my head slowly and saw a face pressed against the glass. Not a human face. It had the shape of one, yes. Eyes, mouth, nose. But it looked unfinished, as if someone had remembered the idea of a face without understanding how skin sits over bone. The eyes were too dark, the smile too still, and the rain running down the window made it look like the thing was melting and holding itself together at the same time. Then it spoke again from the phone in my hand. "Open." I threw the phone into the passenger footwell and lunged across the seat for the emergency flare under the glove box. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. Some old animal part of the brain reaching for fire. The knock came again, this time from the back of the truck, then the passenger side, then the roof. Walking around me, testing. I found the flare, struck it, and the cab exploded with red light. Outside the window, the face vanished. At that exact moment, the engine started. Not turned over, started. The key wasn't even in the ignition. The dashboard lit green. The wipers came alive. The radio crackled. And over the speaker, in a voice like mine, but older, calmer, and full of something hungry, came one sentence. "Now it has heard you." I slammed the truck into gear and drove. The road had become a ribbon of mud and standing water. Twice I nearly rolled the vehicle. The flare burned my palm, filled the cab with smoke, and sprayed red sparks onto the rubber floor mats. But I kept driving, because every time I slowed, I heard footsteps in the rain matching the truck. Not behind, beside. Like something was keeping pace just outside the headlights. I reached Mavuno after midnight. Amina opened the clinic gate before I even honked, like she had been waiting for me. She took one look at my face, grabbed the cooler, and pulled me inside. I told her everything. For once, she didn't pretend I was tired or imagining things. She brought me to the back room where an old man was sitting beside the vaccine fridge, warming his hands over a paraffin heater. I had seen him in the village before, but never spoken to him. His name was Mosi. He listened without interrupting, then asked a question so strange it stopped me cold. What name did it use first? I told him it first used my own over the radio. Then later my wife's contact and my daughter's voice. He nodded as if that confirmed something. It begins with names given freely, he said. Then it uses names held close. Last, it uses the dead, or the almost dead. I asked him what it wanted. Mosi looked at me for a long time. A place, he said. A voice is a door. A welcomed voice is an open door. He told me the listener was not an animal, not exactly a spirit, and not something people had words for before roads cut through that part of the land. It stayed near crossings, routes, and places where people traveled alone carrying need, food, medicine, letters, news. Things that made people open doors even when frightened. It learned urgency first, then trust, then grief. That explained Joseph hearing his dead wife. It explained the roadside figure. It explained the call. What it did not explain was why it had chosen me. Mosi answered that too. Because you keep going when warned. That hurt because it was true. Amina refused to let me drive back before dawn. I slept badly in a storage room while the storm passed, waking every hour convinced I heard someone outside whispering through the clinic walls. At first light, Mosi walked me to the truck. There were handprints all over it. Not muddy, not wet. Ash gray, long-fingered and narrow, as if made by hands too thin to belong to a living person. One print sat on the inside of the windshield. I sold the phone that same day. I burned the seat covers, and I told the clinic manager I would never take the Mavuno route again. He laughed until he saw my face. Someone else took it 2 weeks later. A younger guy from another district, knew enough not to listen to the old stories. He made 3 successful runs. On the 4th, he arrived at the outpost with bloodshot eyes and a split lip where he said he'd bitten through it while driving. He only told Amina one thing. Something outside the truck knew my mother's laugh. After that, the clinic stopped night deliveries to Mavuno entirely. That should be the end of the story. It isn't. Because I left that route 2 years ago. I moved my family to the city. Better school, better clinic, more noise, more people, more light. I thought distance would bury whatever had happened out there. For a while, it did. Then last month, my daughter, she's 8 now, walked into the kitchen while I was making tea and asked me a question I have not been able to stop hearing. She said, "Baba, who is the man outside who knows my old voice?" I dropped the kettle. I ran to the window. There was nobody there. Just the alley, the power lines, and the neighbor's wall shining under a yellow security light. My daughter was still standing behind me, confused, calm. I asked her what man she meant. She said she heard someone by the back gate calling to her in the voice she used when she was little. Then she smiled uneasily and said something I wish I had never heard. He said, "You still keep the road inside you." I checked every lock in the house 3 times that night. I checked the gate. I checked under the windows. Nothing. No footprints, no broken wire, no sign that anyone had been there. But when I finally forced myself to look at my old storage shelf in the laundry room, I found the shortwave radio from the Land Cruiser sitting on top of a sealed moving box I had not opened since we left Kasenga. I know what you're thinking. Maybe my wife unpacked it. Maybe I forgot I brought it. Maybe stress is making patterns where there are none. I told myself all of that too. Then I noticed the power cable. I had cut it off with pliers the night after the storm. But there it was again, whole, connected. And when I stepped closer, the speaker clicked once, like a throat clearing before speech. I did not wait to hear what it wanted to say. I carried that radio outside, poured paraffin over it, and burned it until the plastic ran black and the metal warped inward. I stood there watching until sunrise. Even now, I still wake up some nights convinced I can hear a truck idling somewhere beyond the houses. Not on my street, farther away than that. Like it's waiting on a road only I remember. So if your work keeps you traveling after dark, if you carry medicine, messages, supplies, anything people are desperate enough to open a door for, listen carefully. If the road goes quiet, do not stop. If the radio says your name, do not answer. And if someone you love calls from a place with no signal, do not, under any circumstances, open the door. Because some things in the bush do not chase you home. They let you bring them.